Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call the regular meeting of council to order. Our clerk today will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. We have some late items to introduce, Ms. Gurry.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. For late items, agenda item 2A procedural motion, adding Community Charter Section 90, subsection 1I. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. A motion to proceed in camera, please. Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 5th regular meeting of Nanaimo City Council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Sinamic First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw number 2018, number 7272. The question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question related to an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. We do have members granted permission to attend electronically, but I'm pleased to say everybody is here in the flesh tonight. So the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items, Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. For late items this evening, we have agenda item 10, consent items, where we are adding Special Finance and Audit Committee recommendations from December 1st, 2022.
Very good. Motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes. Oh, we have none to adopt. Not to worry about that. We're on to the Mayor's report. The city is pleased to announce that and confirm that we have been able, with funding, to provide for 2 winter warming centers to support the homeless during cold winter weather. The city's funding will support a warming center operated by the Risebridge Society at 520 Prideaux Street, which will open 7 days per week. In addition, a warming center operated by the 710 Club Society will be opened Monday to Friday at St. Paul's Anglican Church at 100 Chapel Street. They will be open December to March, and warm meals and outreach services will be provided. The city secured the funding through the Union of BC Municipalities Strengthening Community Services Program to support 2022 and 2023 extreme weather and emergency food services. That is very positive news for those of our most vulnerable citizens. I'm pleased to announce also and confirm that the city has been recognized for its climate action work. The City of Nanaimo has been recognized by the Climate Disclosure Project as one of 122 local governments across the globe taking bold leadership on environmental action and transparency despite the pressures of challenging global economics. CDP is a global nonprofit that runs an environmental disclosure system for companies, cities, states, and regions. It's designed to encourage and support local governments to ramp up their climate action and ambition. The CDP's Cities A-list is based on environmental data disclosed by local governments to the CDP-ICLAI track, the world's leading climate reporting platform. There's a clear momentum building in this area. For the first time, over 1,000 local governments, 1,002 actually, received a rating for their climate action from CDP in 2022, an increase from the 965 who reported in 2021. This is the first time the city has reported on its climate targets and actions. In 2022, only 12% of local governments received an A score. To score an A, among other actions, a local government must disclose publicly their climate goals and actions, have a community-wide emissions inventory, and publish a climate action plan. So that is a real compliment to the good work of the citizens of Nanaimo, but most particularly the staff of the city who secured this for us. Well, I'm going to demonstrate my profound grasp of the obvious now by talking about it. So I'm directed to read this fairly clearly. We get it. It's really frustrating to be trapped at home during or following a snowfall. With more than 1,500 lane kilometers of city streets spread over 91.3 square kilometers, there's a lot to keep clear when it snows. The city uses a 3-tier priority system when we send our city plows out to clear Nanaimo's roads. Priority 1 routes, emergency routes, and all major roads. Priority 2 routes, secondary roads. Priority 3 routes, residential cul-de-sacs and dead ends. The system sets emergency routes, key transit routes, and main arterial roads as a priority to keep our city moving. Then we plow onto secondary roads within residential areas, and finally remaining roads, cul-de-sacs, and other dead-end streets. But note, please, as long as it is snowing, crews will be focused on keeping priority 1 routes followed by priority 2 routes clear. This means, sadly and unfortunately, and I get it, and so does the city, that it could take upwards of 96 hours or more for crews to start cleaning residential areas, especially priority 3 routes, depending on the pattern of snow falling, whether there's ice, quick freezes, and all the other things that come with Mother Nature in winter in Canada. And please keep in mind, if you're upset about the state of Stewart Avenue, Brecken Road, Highway 1, the Nanaimo Parkway, and the Old Island Highway, they are maintained by the BC Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure's contractor, Main Road. If you have any concerns relating to those roads, please phone 1-877-215-6006 or email midisland@mainroad.ca. As well as street plowing, the city also maintains public access to city facilities by clearing sidewalks, parking lots, bridges, the waterfront walkway, and the ENN Trail. With respect to sidewalks, it's not just a matter of safety, but convenience. We don't have enough city staff to clear everyone's sidewalk when it snows. This is where you, the good citizens of Nanaimo, come in, whether you're a business owner, a residential property owner, or whoever. Please shovel, salt, and keep your sidewalks and storefronts clear. We recognize that not everyone can physically clear the snow in front of their own residence or business, but that doesn't change the importance of clearing it. Please make arrangements if you need help, and also if you expect to be away from home or work during the winter season. And also keep in mind that it is a city bylaw, it is a requirement. Although the city has, I will be quite candid with you, we work on a complaint grievance process, and most of us don't turn in our neighbors. We tend to do what I've noticed many good people in Nanaimo do, which is if their neighbor hasn't cleared their portion of the sidewalk for various reasons, age, infirmity, absence, we tend to go out and help our neighbors. So take it as an opportunity for community building. And finally, I just want to say thank you to all of those good citizens who've done exactly what I've said with respect to their responsibilities for themselves and their neighbors. I know it's challenging. But as I say, when you have a city of this size, with the limited staff that we do, and the limited amount of budgets we can devote to an occurrence which is still relatively rare in this city, everyone needs to do their part. So let's end on something happy for you skaters. Winter Wonderland event is back at Frank Crane Arena. 6 days of free skating sessions. We're bringing back the popular Winter Wonderland free skating event taking place on December 24th and again from December 26th to December 30th. The Frank Crane Arena in Bevan Park will be transformed into a snow globe theme featuring twinkling lights, seasonal music, a 30-foot Christmas tree, and other holiday decor. Activities over the 6 days include free skating sessions. In addition, there's no charge for helmet or skate rentals. And a Kinsman Pancake Breakfast will occur on Wednesday, December 28th from 9 to 12 at Bevan Park Social Center. So, on that happy note, we'll get back to the agenda. Nothing to rise and report on, Ms. Gurry, but the first presentation tonight is the return of the E-Town Hall discussion of the 2023-2027 financial plan. And I'm going to turn it over to I'll call him our MC, our leading host, our happy gatherer of questions, Reid Botwright. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, everyone. My name is Reid Botwright. Welcome to all of the council returning and new. Welcome to all the staff and all of the citizens who are here with us in person or at home. We've done this a few times before. I've done the emceeing for it before. My job is really just to help you guys, the citizens, get your questions answered by staff and council. So that being said, you'll see up on the display here a bunch of ways in which you can reach out to us and get your questions asked. And we already have a bunch, so we'll be moving through them, and I'll be switching between the online submissions and rewarding the people who showed up here in person to have their questions asked as well. So without further ado, I'll start jumping right into these questions. So the first question is a general one. What new programs and services will you be providing for the homeless to mitigate the problems homelessness is causing for businesses downtown and in the Newcastle area? Will any money be allocated to cleaning up the streets downtown that are increasingly covered in graffiti, trash, and human waste.
No one's going to jump in. I will jump in. We are in the middle of the budget process now. During this calendar year, Council's hired 12 new community safety officers. We've upped the budget for the CLEAN program. Certainly, it is an ongoing concern, and I can tell you that Council is very conscious of the businesses that have closed in the area. Particularly the most recent one is the shutdown of the 7-Eleven. I think we're prepared to work in conjunction with your very active neighborhood association, whose members I see here tonight, staring down at Council, looking for answers and hope. Are there any other members of Council wish to jump in and save the mayor on this one? Councillor Hemmons, bless you.
Well, I'm not going to save you, but I will share that Council did approve a $50,000 graffiti removal program. I'm actually not sure if it's going to extend into Newcastle. It was designated for downtown, but that's a really good follow-up question. And basically, it's a partnership between business owners and the Chamber of Commerce to do graffiti removal from city properties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No one else? Next one.
Oop.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Gesselbrock.
I believe. Yeah, I believe that we also just released funding for 3 different locations for cold weather shelters for folks living in homelessness too. And that will, alleviate folks being in the streets and having to use other facilities that aren't really proper for what they need to do. So hopefully that'll have a small help, but I think that more needs to be done, yeah.
Thank you very much. Not seeing anyone else? Mr. Botwright?
Right. Thank you for that. Now I'll throw it out to the gallery if there's anyone interested in approaching the mic. Anyone? Oh, here we go.
Good
Hi.
evening.
Hello. For those of you who haven't met me yet around the council table, my name is Nancy Mitchell. I'm with the Newcastle Community Association, which is just on Stewart, Terminal, all between that, best location in town. But we have our issues and our problems. And we have sent to you an email that's asking that we're not really looking for money in the big sense of the word. We're looking for a way that we can communicate easily with city staff in an action-oriented situation, and that addresses a number of the issues that we have to address within Newcastle community. And it's what we're looking for is a recovery action committee. It's almost like the mayor's leadership table on COVID-19 or the Prosperity Corporation. We need a way where we and staff can work together to say these are the issues on a day-by-day or a week-by-week or a month-by-week basis, and this is what's happening, and it's going this direction. That's a short-term type of issue for this committee, but there's also long-term issues. Like, I don't think in Nanaimo we have a vacant property bylaw, which requires, for example, where it's instituted in other situations, to have a permit system for vacant properties. At the moment, we have nothing other than our bylaw enforcement to get the weeds down, but nothing that with respect to vacant properties. That's kind of like a medium-term objective I would see of this kind of committee that says, from the community and the staff perspective.
There is a question in here though, right?
Okay, there is. So we're asking that we form what we call a recovery action committee between ourselves at the community association and with staff to look at the issues at Newcastle, to develop a plan and to mitigate the kind of situations that we're dealing with in order that we can go back to where we were 4 years ago as a good neighborhood.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. One of the things that I'd like to see, but we haven't had a chance to discuss committees, is have a safety and security committee come back, and because what your experience is also being experiencing in other areas as well. So I think it would not duplicate it by, having 5 different communities go into the city. So I would like to see that committee come back. Myself, and I believe Councillor Thorpe had sat on it previously, And we found it very effective, and there was lots of recommendations that came out of there, or we didn't even have to come back to council because staff was able to deal with it right away. So that's one thing I'd like to see. And the other thing that I would suggest, I don't know if you've done this or not, is if you reach out to the community policing safety, or community policing coordinator at the RCMP, he may have some ideas around that as well.
Well, that's the kind of discussion that we need to have, but not on an ad hoc basis. We'd like to kind of put it out on the table that these are the kind of things that need to be done. Like the 7-Eleven was being patrolled by the 250 terminal, and not community policing. Where are they? Where are they going? This is, for us sitting in Newcastle, we know some things are happening, but they're not to us in a very coordinated fashion, and we just need that direct contact. We also need support from the economic development function to help deal with all of the businesses that we have. The White Spot is gone, the Husky is gone, 7-Eleven is gone. How do we deal with those vacant properties? How do we deal with business recruitment and retention for the rest of our community? I think whatever we do in the way of a recovery plan and action can be a model for other neighborhoods as well.
And just further on that, when you talked about what we can do for the vacancy bylaw, the community charter doesn't allow us to do a lot of that in the Local Government Act. That's the big issue. So we need to get that, and I know it's gone to the UBCM to give us the powers to do that, but so far, no luck from the province. Whereas Vancouver has its own charter, that's why you see it there. We don't. We have to follow under the BC Community Charter.
Ms. Scurry, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think a lot of what Ms. Mitchell is bringing up is part of a larger discussion that is going to start next week with Council when we do have a committee's discussion, as well as I know that Mr. Lindsay's group is working with some of the neighborhood associations to have a larger conversation, which could spark and initiate further conversations and working groups such as Ms. Mitchell is speaking of. So I think there is more to come, and this is in the works, and we are aware, even more so now that she has spoken this evening, of some of our concerns and desires moving forward. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Botright.
Next.
Sorry, Councillor Thorpe, you wanted to say something.
Oh, thanks, Your Worship. I was going to, but Ms. Gurry actually summed up my points much better than I could have. Namely that, first of all, we will be having a discussion regarding committees in general, and secondly, the work that staff is doing behind the scenes regarding liaising with community associations. And thank you, Ms. Mitchell, for coming tonight. I'm not sure it's directly related to our budget numbers, but it's a valid question, and all communities have unique challenges, and I think it's very important that council stay in close contact with our neighborhood associations. So your points are well taken and certainly will not be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. All right, so the next question is a general one. Can we use some of the city budget funds to change zoning to allow residents of Nanaimo to build a carriage house and have a secondary suite in the main dwelling? If residents are willing to spend their own money on building housing, doesn't it make sense to allow for more density in this manner?
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Late September, had a discussion around the 2023 work plan, part of the 2023 work plan around housing with the planning department. Council provided direction to seek implementing portions of the housing action plan, in particular addressing this question around expanding the carriage home provisions, looking at expanding the secondary suite provisions, especially how they relate to duplexes, and in general, the further densification and intensification in residential neighborhoods through building typologies that's appropriate for those neighborhoods. So, answer this question, yes, that has been allocated for 2023.
Thank you very much.
Good, great. The next one is another general one. Does the city have the power to increase property taxes on empty commercial buildings which are badly deteriorating? By increasing their taxes, they will be incentivized to either improve them or sell them. Or can the city take these buildings over and turn them into temporary shelters for our homeless population?
I think it's fair to say that's beyond our jurisdiction in order to take those kinds of actions. It's an interesting proposition, but we are around assessment issues. We're governed by the province of British Columbia. With respect to taxation, we have certain categories we can tax, but to tax a commercial building that's empty, I don't think Ms. Gurry, pardon me, Ms. Mercer, Ms. Gurry, either one of you?
Your worship, no, we have to tax based on the assessed value of the property. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. Not good try.
It's worth a shot. All right, so this one is for Mayor and Council. Most of the documents discussing consent items I've read represent that consent items apply only to administrative items and not to material matters which relate to budget items. Budget and expenditures are relegated to full and open public meetings. Today's agenda contains 10 items that add millions of dollars to the 2023-2027 budget without public discussion. How much is a move justified?
I was going to say, Councillor Hemmons wants to answer, but go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just jump in and say that all of these budget items that are in consent agenda tonight were discussed in a public finance and audit committee meeting, that the public it's advertised just as a council meeting, and input is brought in the same way as it would in a council meeting. The fact that it's in a consent agenda just means that council has already debated it, and the majority has supported it. Anyone can pull anything off of a consent agenda if they wish to redebate it. Thank you.
And indeed, that's what's going to happen tonight. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. Our procedure bylaw does highlight what is stated here. The motions for tonight, though, they're related to the budget in the sense they're making recommendations, but they aren't readings of the actual budget. They're not bylaws. So as Councillor Hemmons indicated, a person they can come to finance and audit and participate there. They can request it. If they request to appear as a delegation for a consent agenda item, it comes off the consent agenda. But when it does come to the actual readings of the bylaw, they will not, budget bylaw and the financial plan, they will not be included in the consent agenda.
Great. This is another call for anyone who is online watching this to submit through those different methods. Hashtag NanaimoTH on Twitter, cnan.ca/FBTownHall on Facebook, and cnan.ca/WebTownHall on our website to submit your questions. So I'll go back to the gallery again and ask if anyone has any questions about this budget discussion.
Hi there. My
Good
name is
evening.
Vanessa, and I wasn't planning on talking, so bear with me here. I guess I'll formally represent the Nob Hill area. It's nice that we have Risebridge coming in there, but there's 3 daycares around the Nob Hill area, and all those kids use the park, which is one of the oldest parks in Nanaimo. It's beautiful. There's tons of kids in the neighborhood, and I'm just wondering what you guys are going to do to make sure this area stays safe, because we fought very hard after the drug house. I don't know if you remember that. So we're all a little traumatized at what's coming now. I don't want to be a NIMBY, but what's going to happen to make our neighborhood safe for our children? There's tons of families in Nob Hill.
Your point is well taken. As I remember the proposal from Risebridge, there is provision for security there as well, and good neighbor agreement and being responsible for the immediate surrounding areas. In addition, of course, I can assure that our CSOs and our bylaw officers are well aware of potential consequences that arise from any facility that is providing that kind of service.
Yeah, because we're already finding human feces in the park, needles, bloody tissues. I've photographed them in the playground part, and every day I see 3 daycares walking by my house. So it's a serious concern.
If that's the case, and I'm going to suggest that you do send those into bylaws.
I have a personal connection with Barry at bylaws. Yes, I know him well. Yeah, okay,
Very good.
that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I think it's worth noting that that as our city grows and our social disorder in some respect is growing, we have these problems throughout the city, and we have committed more funds, more financial resources to try and deal with them. And we can't be everywhere all the time and solve everybody's problems immediately, but we're certainly aware of them. And I think I can say on behalf of council that public safety is our #1 priority. And we are taking what steps we can to protect our citizens' welfare and to keep our city safe and clean, recognizing that it's a virtually impossible job, but it's top of mind for us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Botright.
Great. Thank you for that. So the next one is from our website. It's a general question. In section C 3.1 of Downtown Reimagined Plan, it states the city is committed to working with all levels of government to support sustained progress towards a safe downtown. How much of the budget is allocated to this part of the donut, and how are we working with other levels of government to reduce the points of entry to poverty, mental health challenges, substance use, etc.?
That is a very broad question. I'm going to give Ms. Mercer a moment to think about the budgetary portion of it, but what I can say is this. We operate with the province of British Columbia, BC Housing, through a memorandum of understanding respecting the construction of housing. For instance, the facility or units being built across the police station are being built pursuant to that memorandum of understanding. We work with them in other projects as well. In addition, we have substantially are in the process of increasing the number of RCMP officers, for instance, a total of 15 hired at the rate of 3 per year over 5 years, and we're more than halfway through that process. We hired and have trained, and I think have produced a very successful team of community safety officers, a dozen in total this year. In addition, we had budgeted this year for 4 more members of the RCMP Bike Squad, which have historically been very effective at controlling street disorder downtown. I, as a member of the BC Urban Mayors Caucus, have worked to secure funding from the government to recognize the province-wide nature of the incredible social disorder arising from the most vulnerable of our street population. In terms of budget, I think I can safely say that the most substantive portion of the potential, and it is only potential until it's approved, tax increase for this year's budget relates to very directly public safety issues, whether it's firefighters who are delivering services across the community, keeping us safe, the community safety officers as well, and the increasing funding for the RCMP. So I think we're doing our part. That's a very general answer, but it's a very general question. But Ms. Mercer, if you can perhaps give me some numbers that will perhaps make the questioner feel a little better.
Your Worship, I'll have to get back to you on that because there's a lot to pack into that. And so there's many different parts that make up that number, and I don't have all of those. For some of the answers tonight that with the questions we have had, we are still calculating the changes that were made from last week's meeting. So some of them, I don't have all the updated numbers at this point.
Any other member of council wish to comment? No?
That was a complicated one.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Just say the homelessness and the addiction crisis and the issues with disorder are increasing the cost to the city year by year, and I think that we are investing a significant amount of our budget on downstream just dealing with it, and the mayor spoke to that, of the community safety officers, police, our fire department's tax, just responding to medical calls for overdoses. We're also putting significant funding towards shelters, warming centers for folks, and then upstream, we're working our best and purchasing land, working with BC Housing for, you know, the housing that's going in. And I think that there's still a huge gulf in investment, not just from the city, but from the province and the federal government in dealing with those upstream issues. Because if we don't deal with those, the cost for the downstream problems keeps on increasing. And so we are expending a significant amount of our budget on the downstream, and then also trying to like fight upstream as well for where the real solutions occur. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The next question comes in from the website. It's a general one. My question is on behalf of the Protection Island Neighborhood Association. Is there sufficient room in the 2023 city budget to see the installation of secure bike lockers in the downtown area become a reality this spring? If so, which budget line would cover the expense? And if not, what is the anticipated timeline?
Mr. Sims.
Your Worship, thank you. There's not currently funds set aside in the 2023 budget for bike lockers downtown. However, this has been an active area of work of our transportation staff, so we'd expect in the next year's budget deliberations that we'll have something there.
Great. I like those straightforward ones. So I'm going to put it out to the gallery one more time.
Councillor Gesselbrock, do you?
Just to follow up the further question to Mr. Sims, is there any budget allocation or planning around end-of-trip facilities such as this in our transportation planning currently?
Your Worship, it's a good question. It would be similar to that. There has been funding in the past for grants for end-of-trip facilities, but this again is part of the active work. One thing that I will note is that our transportation staff have seen a 5-fold increase in the last few years for requests for service. This is mostly to do with parking, speeding, and those types of concerns. The capacity gets swallowed up by dealing with those sort of day-to-day issues, and these longer-term things, unfortunately, take a bit more time.
Last call. We'll take another one from the gallery.
Good evening.
Good evening, Council. My name's Tim McGrath, in case anybody doesn't know me. I want to ask more questions about the budget and public safety as a priority, because I do know that it's not in the city plan. We have 5 goals only, and everyone on council except maybe Ms. Deesmeer has talked to me about safety and security for the citizens. There's 105,000 people in the city, and you only seem to be addressing, for the most part, the downtown core. The CSOs have been downtown only. We heard tonight the graffiti is only downtown. If it's a priority in this council, I don't understand, and maybe you can enlighten me as to why it's not in the city plan.
Councillor Armstrong.
Well, I agree with you. As you know, I said that at the time. That's one of the reasons I did not vote for reimagination, because I think it should be there. I've said the same concerns about most of our dollars are spent on the downtown core. Probably 80% of our safety budget goes to downtown, but that's probably because that's probably where 80% of the issues are. I do agree with you that crime is all over the city, absolutely no doubt. And to that effect, we did hire the 19 more police officers. The CSOs, I think, from my perspective, were hired to see how well they would work and to deal with the most chronic areas at first, with the goal, I believe, to look at hiring more at a later date. So I agree with that, but it's cost a lot of money, right? And I mean, right now, we're not even seeing the police officers that we hired 4 years ago, because with the shutdown of Depot at COVID, we can't even get the resources in. So, I mean, and I also forgot, we have the 40 more firefighters coming on board, 20 this year and then 20 in 2025. which will also help with the overdoses and the growing city. And we have increased our bylaw services as well by, I think, 2 or 3.
And I understand what you're saying. My question then is, why do we need those 40 firefighters if the province was looking after the medical calls?
Well, I'll answer that too. I agree with that, but the problem is we've all seen the ambulance can't do it. So if our firefighters don't go, that means there's going to be no service.
And I agree that the ambulance as it stands now cannot handle the increased load, but where is VHA?
Good question.
Where is mental health? Where's Sheila Malcolmson, your friend? Where are they?
Well, I hope you ask her those questions. Thank you.
Well, it's not up to me to ask her those questions. I think the onus is on the mayor, who is supposed to be our advocate. Now, I've heard that he's sending letters, but we haven't seen them. And until the proof is in front of us, it sounds more like error. But my concern would be when it comes to budgeting, why only 3 police officers? That's approximately $200,000 per officer. $600,000? How much was spent on Metro Drive?
About 1.4 million all in, Mr. Sims, I believe.
1.4 million?
No, pardon me, 14 million rather, 14 million, and of which we received grants of how much?
Has that
Well,
been
no,
audited?
but Mr. McGrath, if you raise the issue, you're going to get your answer. And I have 2 other
fair.
councillors who want to answer your question, but we don't want to have the whole evening dominated by you only, please.
And your worship, I'll just note that there's no debate either as well.
No.
Thank you.
Your worship, Metro Drive received approximately $8 million in grants in federal and senior government funding, provincial funding as well.
Is that on top of the 14?
No, that's included, that's the total.
That's included in the 14. Has that been audited yet?
Mr. McGrath, as Ms. Gurry's pointed out, it's not a debate. You've asked questions. Councillors Perino and Manley wish to respond, please.
I've got to respond. Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say, I also agree with Councillor Armstrong. I think there should be something about safety and security. I agree. If there's one thing that I've learned is we can't get the police officers that we've agreed to hire. So we have agreed to hire 15 more, and we can't get them fast enough because they're not coming through the system. That's part of the problem. So that's out of all of our hands. As far as the fire department is concerned, the biggest issue for me when you talk about safety and security, you have to put firefighting in there, and the numbers that they're seeing are so appalling that you wonder how they went this long without asking for more officers. The next part of it is that our firefighters are there for every major car accident, fire, many other instances, because they need to be there given the materials that our cars are putting out into the road and so forth. And it was interesting, just about 2 to 3 weeks ago, I saw a terrible car accident right down on Bowen. The ambulance wasn't there, the police weren't there, but the firefighters were there. I thought, there's our guys, they're there. So, for me, that was, when we heard the numbers, we all went, this needs to be addressed. And so I agree with you. We need to address these issues. I wish we had a separate document for safety and security to deal with exactly the things that Mr. McGrath is talking about. I think it's an important piece. It doesn't have to be in the OCP for me. It needs to be a document that's clear, because as our city is growing, we need to be prepared for what is needed in the future. So I appreciate you being here, and thank you, and all the comments that you've said. Thank you.
Councillor Manley and then Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry?
Thank you, Your Worship, for the open mic. I have the city plan in front of me, and the third pillar, Healthy Nanaimo, starts out with C3.1, Community Safety and Security. And I'll read it to you, the heading of it. It says, a healthy community is a safe community. Feeling safe and secure in your community is essential to having a high quality of life. Instances of social disorder like crime, harassment, and public drug activity negatively affect people's experiences and can erode feelings of safety and security. Because the root causes of social disorder are complex and varied, reaching long-lasting positive outcomes will require shared and definitive action among all partners and all levels of government. The city is committed to our role in supporting visible, sustainable progress towards a safe and secure Nanaimo for all. And I'm not going to repeat what's been said here about trying to hire more police officers and having a backlog. We can't spend our police budget. That's been clear for a number of years, and that's been, if you watch the financial committee meetings, you would have heard that we cannot spend the police budget because we cannot get police officers here. We have had a structural deficit in the community in terms of the fire department, and the data clearly showed that our fire department is stepping above and beyond in providing safety and security in our community, and so that was a priority for this council to make sure that they got proper budgeting going forward, because the citizens of residents, citizens, property owners rely on the fire department for public safety for a wide variety of things, you know, fires, but also medical calls, medical distress for all residents, and you know, car accidents, other things that have been mentioned. So community safety and security is high on the priority list. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Just to echo that, I think community safety and security is in the official community plan in case there's any confusion. And if people want to read further on the policies around that, you can turn to page 72 of the official community plan. And there's 3 pages dedicated to policies around that. So in case there's any confusion, community safety and security is in the city plan. It's on page 72, 3 pages. Thank you.
May I ask one more question? Why is it not a goal and it only comes in on page 372? And it dedicates 2 pages out of a 300-page report. And it's not at the same level as the 5 goals that are already there. So I'll ask the question again, why is it not a goal instead of a bullet point?
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm hoping we can move on and give some more airtime to someone else to answer the question. But as outlined by Councillor Manny, it is on page 72. The OCP has a whole series of action plans that will be coming forward to council. What is indicated by Councillor Armstrong is the hiring or the commitment to hiring more police officers. As Councillor Perino highlighted, there is some...
Community safety
let me answer, please. As Councillor Perino highlighted, there is some structural problems in getting those, but also council has committed to hiring a significant portion of municipal employees to support the police department and offload as much as possible from RCMP officers to hopefully add capacity. So I think if you look at the track record, this is not to dismiss the concern or the scope and scale of the problem, but within council's jurisdiction, there has been a strong commitment to security. We can always do more, we can always be more creative, but I think you have your answer, Mr. McGrath. You simply don't like it, and now I think it's time we move on and make space for other people to have their questions answered.
If I didn't have such a long-winded response from you, it would be very clear that there is a lot more to citizen safety and security than hiring police officers. If it's not a goal...
Point of order, Your Worship.
Mr. McGrath, I'm going to say this.
Can we have it added on to the agenda? Can somebody make a motion and have
very
it?
clearly, this is not a debating forum. If you want to debate
Very
with
well.
council, there's an opportunity to do so. There's also the possibility of running an election, so you get to sit on this side of the table as well. And I don't wish to sound cheeky when I say that, but that is the nature of the beast. Tonight is a forum on the budget. And I appreciate your comments, and I think Councillor Brown summed it up rather nicely. So thank you. Mr. Botwright.
Thank you, Mayor. So this
Pardon
next,
me, Ms. Mercer, you've got something to add.
sorry.
Yes, so Ms. Fulla, to answer a previous question on public safety, Ms. Fulla has provided me with some numbers on public safety. So the difference, the increase between 2022 budget and 2023 is a little bit over $5.6 million. So this isn't all a tax increase, as we have some general revenues like growth and whatnot that'll offset it, but that is the total expenditure increase from 2022.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Bowright.
Great. I think this one loops back to an earlier question about transportation. How does a neighborhood get an issue in front of transportation staff for consideration or funding in an upcoming budget? The city plan, page 227, states that the city will engage with neighborhoods periodically to review, confirm, and identify project and action priorities. For decades, multiple reviews or surveys by area and groups or individuals for mobility improvements on Hammond Bay Road have not borne fruit, nor have there been any outreach initiatives by transportation.
Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just briefly, I would say that the city plan policy is a new one, this proactive reaching out for looking for transportation issues. But I would note that there is on the website, the city's website, fill in your form about transportation concerns. And I will note, as I noted earlier, the transportation staff are rather slammed, but always attend community or neighborhood association meetings when asked. And I think a couple of examples are Stevenson Point a few times, certainly Chase River a number of times where there's some very hot topics. So while they're not necessarily proactively reaching out looking for problems, the problems really do seem to come to them. They are very responsive to the neighborhood associations, Your Worship.
Councillor Hemmons, then Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would add to that this council has wrestled with how to best engage with neighborhood associations over the last year or so, year and a half, and a new policy is being implemented where we will meet with neighborhood associations at least once a year, and that smaller planning cycles will happen with planning staff. So those would be great opportunities for neighborhoods to flag transit issues or transportation issues with staff, both staff and council.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to add to Mr. Sims' comments, it's important to note that our city staff engage in detailed long-term planning and examination of transportation issues, safety hotspots, and any incidents are documented. Concerns that are brought forward are put in the queue for examination, but we don't react in a knee-jerk way because there are priorities all over the city. And our response is data-driven and based on what staff consider to be top priorities, which are then approved by council. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, and this is a follow-up to that, separate question but related. Are there any plans to provide more transportation options specifically to the Rock City Smugglers Cove area?
Councillor Brown and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Worship. I think that question is specifically speaking to transit options.
Yes.
So with respect to that, transit is operated by the Regional District in Nanaimo. From 1967 till present date, we haven't added about 145,000 annual transit hours. So over the next 4 years, commitment has been made to fund approximately a 65% increase to that level of service. It does require our provincial counterparts to match that funding, but through that process, a transit redevelopment strategy was done, and there will be a reconfiguration of transit routes in the area of question, Rock City and Hammond Bay, that will see the introduction of some reworked neighborhood routes, as well as the addition of, I believe, 2 commuter lines that will provide additional service for that area. So significant changes to the system overall, but also significant changes to the area that was asked about.
Thanks very much, Councillor Brown. Mr. Botwright.
All right. Sorry, I was conflating transit with traffic, but a lot of citizens see them as the same thing. So another one comes in from our website. What proportion of the city's property taxes go to fund grants or subsidies, and how much does the city approve in permissive tax exemptions?
Ms. Mercer.
I do have the answer to this question. So we have approximately $2.4 million budgeted in cash grants for the year. So we have intake processes for those, and that's the budget for a variety of different types of grants. And some of the grants have funding sources other than taxation, but the majority are funded through taxation. With regards to permissive tax exemptions, the 2023 projected value of those is approximately $1.8 million. So the city still has to collect a certain amount of money. So what happens is when a permissive tax exemption is given, we still have to collect the total amount of taxes, so that money is distributed amongst the rest of the property owners throughout the city in each of those classes. And the remaining properties pick up whatever money we give a permissive tax exemption to.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I'll just take this quick opportunity as the former chair of the Grants Advisory Committee to express my support for the whole concept of permissive tax exemptions. I don't know if that was the intent of the question, but I can assure listeners that any organization applying for a permissive tax exemption has to fulfill strict criteria and has to be, in the opinion of council, an organization that makes a very worthwhile contribution to our city and our citizens. And I see it as being money well spent to support those organizations. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think you've got a question here.
Yes, we got one from the gallery now. Hello,
Good
Jeff
evening.
Ansley, how you guys doing? Congratulations on all your victories.
Thank you.
And talking about the OCP, your plan, which most of you accept and agree with, was to reduce carbon emissions and greenhouse gases by 50% by 2030. I would like to know what initiatives you plan for the next 4 years to accomplish that. And I would like to know if, because you've made in that plan obvious, or you put in there that most of these carbon offsets or carbon is coming from vehicles, do you plan to purchase electric vehicles for the city? If so, what's the cost structure of that? They're talking about, I don't agree with this, if you remember from the campaign, but this was the plan. Are we switching to electric snowplows, electric police cars, electric fire trucks? How are we accomplishing it? Is it the citizens' duty to adhere to this 50% reduction, or are you guys going to lead on that initiative? Thank you.
Mr. Sims, can you comment on the electric vehicles? Councillor Gesselbart wants to say something.
Oh, just, we've set these targets for greenhouse gas emissions. There's wide international acceptance that, that municipalities and province and nations need to make these policies put in place. Our emissions come from, a large part from vehicles and also from buildings. And at the city, we are putting in place policies to look at retrofits for buildings and also for new builds on, reducing carbon through electrification, through, better insulation. And then also with the transportation, the province has set a target for electrification of a lot of single passenger vehicles by a certain date. And the city is, in line supporting that where we can, with respect specifically for city vehicles. In this budget, we have allocated a budget item for a fleet electrification strategy, where basically staff will be proceeding looking at what are our requirements in terms of electric charging facilities and what are the costs involved, for electrification of our fleet, right from, the small vehicles that we use for doing building inspections to larger things like garbage collection, and it's not a simple process. And obviously we need to weigh the costs and also meeting our targets, and it requires a focused study to put what our priority is going to be. But we're investing in that, and hopefully it'll be able to unfold in line with meeting our targets, which we do need to make progress on. Thank you.
Mr. Sims, then Councillor Armstrong.
Your Worship, I think Councillor Gesselbrock's covered a lot. I would say it's the city's portion of greenhouse gas emissions from the community overall is relatively small, but we are in fact, council is in fact leading by example. You referenced an earlier comment from the CDP tonight, that the recognition there, as well as setting targets, and the city plan is very ambitious as far as city-owned buildings, as well as privately owned buildings, city-owned vehicles, privately owned vehicles, but certainly our fleet electrification plan, we electrify where we can and where it's feasible to do so, where the vehicles are available.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I can just answer your question on the police vehicles. I can tell you the RCMP has no plans to go that direction unless they're for non-operational vehicles, because the vehicles run 24/7 and there's no time to charge them.
Councillor Perino.
Your Worship, something that Mr. Sims was telling us in our budget meetings the other day that I thought was a valuable comment that I hoped you were going to mention. And the fact is, the big trucks that you're working, the plows and so forth, they can't sustain what the electric vehicles give us. So we're forced to certainly be fuel still. So I just thought that was a fascinating, because you think, gee whiz, we want to change, but it just isn't feasible at this time until the progress is made on electric vehicles. It's just not there yet for the big loads that you have to take care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Botright.
Thank you. So this one is for Mayor and Council. Business cases approved include a budget clerk, budget accountant, and public safety person. Do we have these positions currently? If we already have these positions and are adding more, have we done a proper exercise in business improvement before taking these steps?
Your Worship, it was a road safety person. Just that was one of the positions that you approved last week at the budget meetings.
Mr. Rudolph.
Your Worship, the city is growing about 1,500 to 2,000 people a year. That's the equivalent of a small town every year. Now, a small town generally has 5 to 10 staff. So we can expect with that amount of growth that we're going to need, just for capacity and volume of issues, to have to grow our team. Most of these positions are support positions that support the flow of building permits, a variety of things in the system, and it's spread right across the organization, if you notice, from the finance department to the parks, rec, and culture, and that type of thing. So it's just going to be a need for capacity within the organization on an ongoing basis as growth continues. So these are actually, the process of calling out business cases started with a much longer list, even at the staff level, and we've brought this down to what our recommended priorities are, and most of them are administrative support, so that we can deal with the business systems more efficiently. And I might also add that we are investing significantly in technology. As you know, fairly significant upgrades to all of our technology platforms, including a building permitting system that is intended to streamline the transparency and flow of a lot of information. So I think we're attacking this on multiple fronts, and it will be a continuation in the future.
Thanks, Mr. Rudolph. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, unfortunately, I missed the meeting due to a funeral, but when I calculated the cost for all that, it works out to be about $1 a month for the 4 that they talked about. Then if you look at the other, I think the 0.4 works out to be about, what, $15 a month, if that? So it's not a lot of money overall for something that we really need. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. How much has been spent on making roads safe by maintaining centerline markings?
Now that is a very technical question.
Your Worship, we budget approximately $400,000 a year, but for example, this year, supply chain issues, paint was a challenge, but we spent about $80,000 in materials towards paint. And it was about a 4-week effort to do most of the center lines in the city.
Great. I'm going to do one more rapid fire and then I'll throw it out to the gallery once more. Is it possible to state the city's budget in very simple terms, such as those used by individuals and families in developing their own budgets, i.e., 1, income, 2, savings, 3, expenses, and 4, debt?
Since we climbed out of the trees a few million years ago, we have made life increasingly complex. Don't we all wish we could reduce it to those 4 simple categories? And in each of those categories or subcategories, even at our house, I can assure the questioner that there's more than 4 items in the Krog budget. So I appreciate the question, but Ms. Mercer might be able to offer the view of a genuine chartered accountant. Or certified public accountant, I guess is the new language.
The only thing I can add to this, Your Worship, is that our financial plan bylaw actually is broken down almost into those categories. So in it has the revenues, not in detail, but in total. And it has operating and capital expenditures. It shows our debt. And then it has reserves, which is pretty much a savings account. So if you looked at the bylaw, it does break it down into those categories on a very, very high level. So that's...
Emphasis on high level to the questioner. Councillor Thorpe.
Thanks, Your Worship. I appreciated that question because I don't think it's untrue to say that basically that's how our budget is broken down. As most residents know, our city is not allowed to run a deficit. So it's up to our staff to determine how much money they think we need to operate the city for the coming year. That determines how much revenue we need to bring in. We have some savings in the form of reserves, which we are required to maintain. And we have a certain degree of city debt, which is relatively minor because we don't want to take on unnecessary debt. So I think our staff does an excellent job of very basic bookkeeping, but at a very technical and detailed level. And that's how our taxes are determined, how much revenue we need to cover the expenses that we expect to face. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe, and thank you, Ms. Mercer.
All right, we'll go back to the gallery.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Todd Trimble. I live at the top of Fitzwilliam. I won't beleaguer the point about disharmony in the community is due to things that are drawn into that place, but fact is I live across from St. Peter's where the winter shelter is, so to a lesser degree we do see a lot of the same kind of things there as well. My question though is budgetary. Is there money in any way accessible in this budget, or is there some way for the public to influence funding so that there could be a permanent location there's no perfect spot, but in an optimal location that isn't necessarily in residential community, again, next to daycare centers, around houses. Also, the other problem with the spot that's up at the shelter is the disabled, right? It's a full kilometer all the way uphill to get there for people in wheelchairs and this kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, is there any push or is there any money towards a facility that would be dedicated to that would be permanent instead of the rotating thing that we kind of see?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Eastmere.
Just really thank you for your question. I think it's a really good one. As far as I'm aware, it's not currently in the 2023 budget, but there's certainly people on council who agree with you around that issue. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Could I just ask the second part too? And I mean, by all means, if you can't answer this tonight, that's fine. I can get it in an email later. But one of the problems I'm finding, and a lot of my neighbors are too, is the inability to influence some of that beforehand. We find ourselves complaining. Is there any way that we can, I mean, I come from Alberta where the funding is completely different, right, between province and municipality. Is there any way we can influence how we get the money to you so that you can do the good work?
You've inspired a lot of answers, Mr. Trimble. Councillors Manley, Gesselbrock, and Armstrong in order.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Island Crisis Care has a facility on Nickel Street. It's a brand new facility, 702 Nickel, and they deal with a lot of complex issues there. So there's a shelter built in there. There's people that have been homeless who have complex care issues on different floors. There's 4 floors there. And what we need is more buildings like that. And so we need to be working with senior levels of government. We need to be working with the province, providing land. You know, not everybody wants it in their backyard, but we do need to spread this out in the city, and so that it's not a burden on a single neighborhood. But that is a facility that is very well run and provides the kind of care that people need and gets people off the street and living in our parks. So I just want to thank you for, you know, coming and talking to us about this. I'm actually have another gig as the executive director of the Unitarian Shelter, and so we work on good neighbor agreements and try to ensure that we're not impacting the neighborhood. We have a school right across the street too, so these are all considerations and concerns for people throughout the community, and as a society, you know, we measure ourselves by you know, how those that are doing having the hardest time in our communities. That's a measurement of our commitment to our fellow human beings, and so we clearly need to do better. But thank you for your question.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Just so you know, Nanaimo's actually done very well with getting lots of supportive housing under the Liberal government. We had 4 sets, and now under the, I think we get another 4 coming with the NDP, and just had got one, so we're doing quite well on that. But you're correct, when we have the overnight shelters, part of the problem is there's nobody to run them. When you put out requests for proposals and you're getting 0 replies back, because I think what's happening is they're struggling to get staff as well. So that's one of the issues that we're facing. And secondly, and this is my belief, it's not shared by everybody on council, but the funding for that belongs with the provincial and federal governments, not the municipal government, because that's not our core responsibilities underlined in the Local Government Act nor the Community Charter. So for me, that's where the government needs to step up, and this city has many times given land, free land, like I think the last piece was $300,000, something like that. So we have always been prepared with an inventory of land to give if it's suitable. The other problem comes in is sometimes the lands that we own are not suitable for shelters or BC housing. Thank you.
Mr. Trimble, thank you.
Thank you.
Good question. So I don't know what timeline we're on for this. We do have a...
We've got about another 5-6 minutes, I believe. We start about 1/4 if I'm not mistaken.
Good. I want to respect everyone's time. So we'll do, when planning projects, is there a budget overrun factor included as standard practice? I.e., in previous occupation, we would insist that a project be stress tested with overruns and various financial costs.
Mr. Sims is going to come down, and Councillor Brown wants to answer as well. He's going to defer to Mr. Sims and then follow up if necessary.
I think I'd be very quick. We have a pretty robust project management framework that reviews all projects. There's a contingency fund built into every project. Council, anything that goes over budget typically comes to council for authorization. Anything that's under budget never makes it to council other than in reporting. And usually between the two, it's about a wash. 50% over, 50% or under in terms of total monetary amount. And staff aren't authorized to complete any project that isn't approved in the budget or financial plan.
Mr. Sims, you're just going to say ditto?
Your Worship, what he said.
Agreed entirely. And let me just say something in general response, because there's a certain, I'll call a level of cynicism behind that question. Please, public, have a little more faith in the people who work for the city and the politicians who they are responsible to ultimately. Cities and governments function on the basis of probably so much more consideration than happens in the private sector, because in the private sector, you're not responsible to the boss up the chain, or if it's your own business, certainly, and or a council. Now, in a public corporation, a larger private corporation, a board of directors and a CEO, yes, but the reality is that, as Councillor Brown has so ably pointed out tonight, there is a very robust system in place, and money does not get spent easily. People may not appreciate where the money is spent, and it may not suit their particular priorities. But please, for a moment, don't think there's a bunch of people sitting in dark rooms over at SARC or Public Works figuring out how to overspend on projects, because we do spend a fair bit of time, as Councillor Brown has pointed out, having to deal with those situations. And in fairness to our staff, I'll offer a public compliment here today, as I have on other occasions on behalf of Council. The last few years with COVID, supply chain issues that Mr. Sims has referred to, the increasing cost of labor and all of those things has placed tremendous strain on public sector expenditure, just as it has in the private businesses of this community. We've all had our struggles to meet, and I'm proud of the way staff has responded here. So, please, Mr. Botwright.
Okay, I'll try to wrap it up with one that might give a few opportunities to speak. Would City Council support, fund, and find suitable locations for societies doing outreach work if those societies had credibility of some kind?
Councillor Armstrong.
Well, I think you've already heard my
Councillor
position, which is no, because I believe that health, et cetera, belongs to provincial and federal government. That's who the mandate is. The Constitution says that. So for me, we don't have the dollars to do it. We also don't have the ability to run it. And without VHA or whatever on board, so for me, absolutely not.
Councillor Perino.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. Absolutely what Councillor Armstrong said. However, I think we can be good advocates. And I think it's important that we advocate to our provincial and our federal government to say, you're not doing enough. And something that was said earlier, Your Worship, about you in particular not doing enough to enforce. And I would challenge all of this council that, and several of us are new, that, you know what, it is important that you and all of us become good advocates. And I think that that's certainly our plan over the next 4 years. So whether or not it's within our jurisdiction, we can certainly stand up and say, enough is enough. We expect more help. So that's just my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more? Do we have time? Or
One more. Sir.
One more. Okay.
Let's do one more.
All right. Here's one. Why is the city budgeting $50,000 for an EV study?
Mr. Sims, we'll go back over that road again. Electric vehicle this time.
Your Worship, I think the question's really been answered, but I can quickly summarize. I think the path forward in balancing the functionality of electric vehicles, the type of electric vehicles, and their availability is critical to understand in a long term, along with what charging infrastructure, as we transition our fleet more and more to electric, do we need in place. This will help not only our financial planning, but it'll also help BC Hydro respond to improvements to the grid if necessary. As an example, if we're going to start plugging a lot of things in, we're going to need a lot more power.
Thank you very much. Mr. Botwright, thank you very much for your work again this evening.
Thank you,
everyone,
everyone, for your
to all of
answers.
those here tonight and who participated in person and via means that I generally am not known for participating in myself, because I don't pretend to be technologically perfect. And thank you to members of council for the responses, and staff as well who've assisted us. Thank you. We have no committee minutes, Ms. Gurry. I'm going to ask for a motion for adoption of the consent items to be moved and seconded, and then I'll ask for the removal of those items which we wish to consider separately. Moved by Councillor Perino, seconded by Councillor Brown. Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, could I please have number 10 removed, unallocated pedestrian fund?
Sorry, 10?
Just 10.
Just 10.
Yeah. My question was answered on the other one, so I only want to discuss 10.
So item, to be specific, 10A10.
Yeah. unallocated pedestrian.
That's correct, Your Worship. So then a motion for the remainder of the consent items first, and then discussion on the removal of one.
I had asked for a motion for,
Your Worship, the motion on the floor right now is for all of the consent items, and then the one that
Yes.
Councillor Armstrong requested will be discussed
exactly,
afterwards, yeah.
yes. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. And Councillor Armstrong?
Yes.
10A10?
Yeah, I'm sorry that I couldn't make last meeting, but I do have concerns about this, having looked at the information that was at the meeting and whatever, and the fact that we're going to have a lot of overruns, or the possibility of a lot of overruns on many of our projects. So I'm concerned where the money will come from. And my other point on this one is, if we do want to get that extra dollars for any pedestrian infrastructure, it can come from the special infrastructure or strategic infrastructure reserve. So I do want to vote against this. So I just wanted that out there, because I don't believe at this particular time it's the right time to do this with two major projects coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Thorpe?
Thank you, Your Worship. I gave this some thought after our vote last time, and I was on the minority side of the vote, but I'm glad that we are discussing it again. To me, moving the money in this manner provides more limitations to council. If it's in the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve, we can use it as needed if we need it for some projects that are in the queue, and we can always decide to draw it upon it for a transportation item if we feel that becomes a priority. If we take the money out and put it into an earmarked fund for whatever reason, I feel that we're just limiting ourselves. Let's leave the money where it is most accessible to use for whatever needs we feel are priorities during the coming year. The money's still there, it's just, I think, better left in the pot where it is now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. In order, Councillors Sprino, Eastmere, and Gesselbrock.
So, thank you, Your Worship. Is there an actual motion on the floor?
Yes, we're voting on 10.
So we're voting as to whether or not we...
increase the unallocated.
Okay.
You'll recall the...
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I have a question through Your Worship for Ms. Mercer. So my understanding, because I was dealing with the same issue that Councillor Thorpe was alluding to with the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve, does that mean that if we put that money into that particular reserve, we can use it for projects that need funding or pedestrian uses? My confusion was exactly as Councillor Thorpe talked, and I just don't understand, because my understanding was that when you put it into a reserve, it has to be used wherever the reserve is.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the words. Thank you.
Through Your Worship to Council Perino. So we have the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve, which has approximately right now about $3 million in it.
Okay.
So when right now in that budget, we have $300,000 allocated for unallocated pedestrian projects. So the money sits there, but that money is allocated specifically to pedestrian projects. We could, if council chose, could make a decision to allocate some of that money to something else if it was not already committed through a tender and whatnot. So with this additional $700,000, we would take $700,000 from that $3 million total and kind of earmark it for unallocated pedestrian projects. So as long as we don't go out and start the process of building something, whether that's the start of a tender or actual construction, we could reallocate that money so it is in there. It's earmarked for unallocated pedestrian projects. But if there was if another project came in over budget and that money that was earmarked for that we hadn't made a solid plan on it, we could take some of it and apply it to the over budget project. If that.
I think so. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm not asking to stifle debate here, but we had a robust debate on this very motion the other day. So I'm going to suggest the councillors who wish to speak to it be very brief and not at all, frankly, unless you've changed your position. Councillor Eastmere.
Just thinking back to the map that Jamie Rose showed us during that part of the finance meeting with all the things marked in purple and pink that council was able to do in the last term because of this allocated pedestrian money. And then the one for 2023, there was like 4 dots on it, and it was really sad. And I just think that it's worthwhile us investing this in pedestrian infrastructure.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock. Ms. Mercer.
Thank you, Worship.
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the one thing I do want to say is we have funded, the Community Works Fund has funded a lot of active transportation projects, and currently that ends in March 31st of 2024. So we don't have any funding in our budget after 2023. So as soon as we know, we anticipate that the project or the program will continue, we just don't know what our share looks like and what we can fund with it. So as soon as we know on that, that money will go back, we'll put that revenue source back in the budget, and then it will be available to fund various projects. But I just wanted
Thank
to.
you, Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. I think community safety, road safety is very important. There is a huge backlog and list of pedestrian upgrades that need to be made. These projects require planning and design that can take up to 2 years to accomplish, and by having these funds allocated now, provides the stability that's needed for proper implementation. So I think it is important that we do allocate it now to allow our transportation staff to go ahead and make those long-term plans to make the community safer and get these pedestrian amenities in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Mercer already answered my question, and that is that we can allocate this to sidewalks, and if something comes up, we can take it back out of sidewalks and put it into something else, as long as it hasn't gone to tender. And so what we're stating by doing this is that sidewalks and pedestrian safety is a priority. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong?
Just a question, because we've seen some of our budgets already go over $1.2, $1.3 million. So if let's say the turf field comes up over 1.2 and Loudon comes over 4, where do we get the money from for those then?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Armstrong, that will be a challenge if they come in that over budget.
Yeah, that's my big concern. That's why I will not be voting in favor of this, because if we do have we get the overages and we've got the money, great. If we don't, then we got to go to borrowing. And I don't want to see that, especially at the interest rates we're at. So for me, I'd rather leave the money there. And then if there is a pedestrian fund and we've already got the stuff, then we can always take it out at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I said earlier, I'm not going to repeat what I had to say the other day, and the turf fields was one of the examples. The motion is to increase the unallocated pedestrian improvement budget from $300,000 to $1 million for 2023, funded from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve. All those in favor? Councillors Eastmere, Gesselbrock, Hemmens, Brown, and Manley. Those opposed, Councillors Armstrong, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Thorpe, and Councillor Bruno. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Vigorous debate. We're now getting on to the next item, which is delegations unrelated to agenda items. And the first is introducing the Nanaimo Area Public Safety Association. Colin Middleton, Nanaimo Area Public Safety Association, will speak regarding the outlining advocacy, sharing resources, and speaking up for the public in Nanaimo. Welcome, Mr. Middleton.
Hello. Nice to be in front of all of you. This is intimidating, to say the least.
Trust me, they're not a hard bunch, really.
Okay, start. Good evening, Mayor Krogh, City of Nanaimo Council. My name is Colin Middleton. I'm a father of 2 young boys, a husband, and a professional biologist. I've come here this evening as a concerned Canadian citizen and a resident of South Nanaimo. I'm presenting in order to introduce you to the Nanaimo Area Public Safety Association, NAPSA. We have 185 members and were formed in the days following this fall's municipal election. We are nonpartisan and we do not have any funding from public agencies nor private donors. We believe that Nanaimo is a beautiful, culturally rich city with much to offer our province, but it has a grave public safety problem. 7 years since the opioid crisis was declared, fatal and non-fatal drug overdoses have continued on a frightening incline, driven primarily by the highly addictive, highly potent synthetic opioid fentanyl. All of us collectively, as family members, neighbors, friends, and coworkers, desperately need this crisis to ease. The trauma inflicted continues to manifest destructive forces in our civilization and are now entrenched in North American culture and counterculture, including on Vancouver Island. Our public intellectuals and renowned experts are figuratively screaming from the rooftops, hoping that our public servants will understand and heed their calls for reform, but are getting more frustrated by the hour. Us citizens are already out of patience. Solutions are brought forward, public money is spent, the wheels of not-for-profit advocacy turn, fueled almost entirely by public money, and the problem keeps getting worse and more expensive to resolve. We are told by harm reduction advocates that a regulated safe supply is the answer to toxic drug poisonings. Those of us who talk to the people who use drugs and ask them about their addictions listen when they tell us that fentanyl is what they seek. We understand that street drug concoctions evolve following free market economic principles. Users want bang for their buck, and suppliers want high demand and exclusive access to users and supply to maximize profit. A highly addictive and inexpensive to manufacture substance such as fentanyl is the ideal consumer product. Its downside is tendency to kill customers. Details. In these absurd circumstances, addressing the root causes of addiction is imperative to ebb demand. Fentanyl is characterized as toxic because of how small an amount is lethal. This technical term should not be confused with it also being highly addictive. There are advocates in British Columbia today who receive surprisingly large sums of public money to challenge laws designed to keep the general public safe and do not acknowledge addiction as anything other than habitual recreational enjoyment or a construct of oppressive governmental forces. These viewpoints are actively misguiding the public to believe that destigmatization and decriminalization are among the last remaining barriers to delivering us from a societal scale of oblivion. Regardless of whether hard drugs are decriminalized, we offer our testimonial experience as neighbors to open-air illicit drug use, the social order consequences of cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and fentanyl use impact us as hosting communities, and we won't sit idly by as our families and our homes' safety and security are under assault. The Thieving Nanaimo Facebook group has over 22,900 members, the largest virtual town square in the city, where the anger and resentment over these impacts rage strongly. Our position on municipal matters is simple. We support community safety initiatives because of the issue's status is tenuous. The response should be formalized as a goal in the Reimagine Nanaimo plan. On the provincial policy, NAPSA is strongly opposed to the language of Ministerial Order M488. We believe it has outlived its relevance and needs to be replaced. The legal no man's land for illegal drug use created by M488 have allowed drug user groups to appear wherever and whenever they are able to secure a lease agreement without notice, public consultation,
One minute, Mr. Middleton.
or courtesy. We do not support disbursement of public monies through multi-level nonprofit schemes where public accountability is obscured. We're not okay with any safe supply or harm reduction operation that does not have active formal public health oversight. Before you this evening, NAPSA has these requests. We ask that this council please motion and vote to expand the community safety officer zone to include the 400 block of Victoria Road, Nickel Street, and surrounding laneways. As for the other requests, while we directly are applicable to our advocacy, we recognize that we are unlikely to resolve this evening. Thank you, Mayor Krog and Council, for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Middleton. You came in under time. No, sorry, I appreciate that, but approval or disapproval of what happens down here just isn't part of the rules of the game. And it's Krog, by the way. Long O rhymes with Ogre Road, but you can call me whatever you want out of Chambers. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I see that you didn't get to ask all the asks, so can you let us know what all your asks were, please?
So tonight the main one was expanding the community safety officer zone. We do think that public safety and security should be amongst the highest level of priority for the city of Nanaimo. We understand you've already addressed that earlier. We would like to see the Nandu operation move to a more safe location away from family residences, businesses, and heavy traffic. We would appreciate if this council would forward our concerns to the applicable ministers and critics at the provincial level, and we do want to see transparency for public money used for safe supply and harm reduction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Sorry, I'll keep getting that. Mr. Middleton, you did a great job, and I hope that you will share this, your slides with all of us. That
Absolutely.
would be very helpful. You've done an excellent job tonight, so I just wanted to ask, have you been able to speak to any of the MLAs or MPs? I just wondered what the background is.
So there's a number of impassioned members within our association that are looking and actively engaging with provincial level public servants. Okay. We today received a form letter response from Sheila Malcolmson, which all of us received the same letter. It is, I would call a form letter boilerplate. I would suggest that the letter does not instill confidence that she understands exactly what the surrounding communities are dealing with.
Okay. I didn't for one second want to give the impression that I was expecting you to see the other levels of government. I just think that your presentation is so strong and you speak so clearly that I just think it's...
Yeah, I appreciate that. We would like to have a provincial audience because we realize that our advocacy is primarily geared towards provincial level.
Yes.
What we've seen so far in discussions and communications we've tried to have with VIHA and the province is a lot of runaround. FOI requests get passed between departments. Not a lot of direct engagement. I don't think they take us seriously. At this point in time, we are simply gathering our strength for a provincial flight. We are connected with other city-level safety organizations. We've reached out to a number of them, the most recent of which is the Safe Streets Penticton, which are quite active and have been in the news as of late.
Yeah.
We do attempt to communicate. It is difficult sometimes for us to find the diplomatic voice, considering the frustration that we've experienced over a long time. Me personally, I'm relatively new to Nanaimo. I moved here just over a year ago, but since engaging with the people that have these concerns in the community, I realized that the issue requires advocacy at this point in time, simply because the advocates on the side of supporting the people who use drugs have been very successful at influencing public opinion and public discourse. However, if you try to just have that conversation about the surrounding impacts to people who are simply trying to live their lives and protect their assets and their homes and their safety and security, you get nothing but derision and patronizing, and they basically suggest that you're uncompassionate and insensitive, which is not even close to being the case.
Not true, no. Thank you so much.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Middleton, for your presentation. You've actually inspired a question that I'd like to direct to our CAO, and that's regarding the community safety officers. They've been in place probably 8 to 10 weeks. When do we expect to do an evaluation on that program and then potentially have a conversation of expansion if it's successful?
Well, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hemmons, this is on the list of all the briefings and feedback to council. So I suspect early in the new year, we'll be in a position to give you a quarterly report on I'm getting actually already a monthly report on the number of files, the type of files, that type of thing. But it is very new, and I would suggest give it another month or so. But I think early in the new year, we can turn this back to council and provide you with a fulsome report on that and other activities in the public safety realm.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Middleton.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Middleton. Councillor Manley, sorry.
All right, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your presentation. I'd like to see you make this presentation to a provincial committee on mental health and addiction. I have a question for the CAO because I've seen the community safety officers in Bowen Park as far up as Wakasaya. So I'm wondering why they wouldn't be able to be in a broader area. Are they not serving a wider area?
Through His Worship, the Councillor Manley, actually the CSOs are involved in files outside of the core of the downtown. So
that's what I thought.
I don't think it's a firm line in the sand. And so as warrants and needs arise, they are participating in that. Also, we've really pushed our bylaw officers out further into the community because they were so concentrated previous to the CSOs, community safety officers being on board, that they've now been able to get into the parks and some of those other areas where we're receiving a number of calls for service by community members that are walking their dog and they're concerned and they want to have that sense of safety. It's not that we're necessarily treating the folks in the tents and in the woods poorly, but there's more attention that needs to be spent more than just outside the downtown. So we're alive to that. And again, that's something that could be brought to you in a more fulsome workshop, GPC format after Christmas.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, and then I'll shut up. I really appreciate all the work you're doing, and I know that you guys are tracking calls to police, bylaws, et cetera. Would you also be doing that for CSO so that, you know, in 3 or 4 months, if you were able to come back and show the effectiveness for us as well? Because it's great for us to see from files, but it'd be really nice to hear from the neighborhood if you're seeing that there's been a definite improvement because of steps that bylaw or CSOs are doing.
Yeah, I can tell you that we very much do appreciate what bylaw and the RCMP are doing in our neighborhoods when we call, and we have been able to get response. I think we try to track these. Mainly what we're trying to do is make sure that everybody actually calls, because a lot of people are either aren't sure entirely like whether they should call or not. Some people are frustrated because they don't feel like they're being taken seriously anymore because they called so often. Some people are like feel it's futile, and so they don't bother. But I will be providing a statement on behalf of Teresa Perry later, and I'll indicate some of what she's experienced. But the we can only track. I mean, we can only track what people are telling us through the feed in our chats. We don't have direct access to the city database to do our analysis. We do have some ways of evaluating data from emergency response, so we can query the public forum for that, and we are able to identify some trends with respect to particular intersections or blocks within the city over time in terms of the responses. But I think just generally what we really hope, and again, this is not a criticism. What we're hoping is strong engagement from bylaw, and have bylaw be empowered to enforce those bylaws. You know, I think when complaints are made, you know, sometimes it'll be like, well, you know, we'll get out there, or thanks for letting us know, and that's kind of the end of it. We don't really know what happens from there. But like I said, we do have good relationships with people at bylaw, and we do appreciate their work. I think our message at the municipal level really is, please keep the engagement up, and please empower and encourage them to consistently enforce the bylaws.
Thank you. And I will add, hopefully the RCMP analyst will be back soon, which will be able to do that work.
Yeah.
But they've been
and we have good connections too with the outreach teams of the RCMP. Since I'm moving to Nanaimo, within the first month, somebody overdosed and died on my property. And from that incident, I met Gary O'Brien, and a few months later, my garage was broken into, and had a number of sentimental things were stolen from me, and again, Gary O'Brien was there and helped navigate, how to outreach. So the RCMP has been very helpful and it's been very encouraging to have their ear.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Middleton, much appreciated. The next delegation is concerns regarding the Nanaimo Area Network of Drug Users site. Mr. McGrath. You'll have 5 minutes. I think you know the drill, and I'll let you know in a minute when you have a minute left.
Thank you, sir. You'll recall 2 weeks ago that you heard from Nandu. You also heard a desperate plea from a citizen about the lack of safety and security and the worries that she had. Most of council appeared to be moved by her presentation. Unfortunately, the only thing council suggested is things for her to do. Apparently, the city didn't offer up what responsibility that they would assume for the problems. I want to thank members of council who asked some very diligent questions and worthwhile questions. Some of the things that we heard was that Nandu doesn't really have any record keeping. They have no real medical staff on site, and other than one short period a week. Council, I'm sure you're aware of the number of police calls, fire calls, ambulance calls, and bylaw calls regarding this property at 264 Nickel. I want to thank Councillor Manley for his diligent questions about record keeping and statistics and other questions that he posed. New Councillor Perino asked some very important questions along with Councillor Cheryl Armstrong. What we found out is that Nandu is really a bunch of drug users hanging out with other drug users. There's no education. There is no sense of trying to solve the problem, either through detox or rehab or directing people to other facilities. In reality, what we have is an open-air crack house. Roughly translated, that is that one set of drug users socializing with another group of drug users. We also know that there are numerous overdoses on the site or close by with the heavy use of naloxone, and most of the time it's not with the intention of reducing or curbing the drug problem. So far, this open-air crack house has for some reason remained open for a period of 8 months. Prior to this previous council and this council, there was a safety and security committee in which interested citizens or neighborhoods could approach the city and have those crack houses closed, with the assistance of the Safety and Security Committee. Last council has canceled or terminated that committee. We knew it was only a matter of time before more of this occurred, as well as other issues in the city. I've approached every person on council at one point or another in the last year requesting that citizen safety and security become a goal of the city plan. So far, the city fences around fountains and grassy knolls. The city has hired security guards in certain select privileged areas when the rest of the city is left to fend for themselves. Council claims safety and security is important, but from the issues tonight, by a wide variety of attendees, people have serious concerns that the city is not doing enough. So I want to thank those people for bringing it forward. It isn't just me. You may recall that the citizen safety and security was brought before council through the neighborhood security audits during the last term, and nothing was done. The city's own survey indicates 68% of the people do not feel safe. There are about 105,000 persons in the city, and they're all entitled to safety and security. We come to some difficulty now. The city is aware of crack houses and has closed them down previously, but this one seems to be a problem. The problem is likely to expand. We've seen it come from, based on a Vancouver issue. Vandu has subsequently lost its city funding because it cannot deliver the intended solution. According to Ann Livingston, Nandu has previously one location and it was closed down. They simply relocated. We have to come up with a solution, a permanent plan, well thought out solution. If not Nandu, will simply relocate again. The problem simply spread to more and more neighborhoods. City councilors in the previous city have watched the demise of Terminal Avenue all the way from the Peterson Bridge all the way down past town site. Citizens have watched Nickel Street all along the way from the A&W to the extension of the Victoria Crescent, and now all the way up to Needham Street. This stretch of Needham to almost Rona has deteriorated significantly and will soon join the likes of Terminal Avenue. I guess that the bright side here is that it's not as bad as the downtown east side. That's not a claim to fame that the citizens of Nanaimo want.
Thank you. I was just about to say, if you could wrap up, please.
Thank you.
Questions for Mr. McGrath? Councillor Perino?
Your Worship, actually a question that you'll be able to answer. We do not provide any funding to the group Nandu. Right. It was a comment that, that you had made about funding from, I think, Vancouver for Vandu, that they received, they were no longer getting their city funding, right? And we have not at any time given funding to Nandu. So I just wanted to make that point known that this was not something that we...
And the point is that Vandu hasn't lived up to their expectations, and neither is Nandu.
Thank you. Thank you for commenting tonight.
Thank you very much. And the last one is concerns regarding the Nanaimo Area Network of Drug Users site. And Mr. Middleton, you're going to speak on behalf of Ms. Perry.
Yes, thank you for that. I've been in touch with Ms. Perry, and she sends her regrets, but she is not well, and so she's asked me to speak on her behalf.
If you could begin, please. Thanks.
I'm delivering this statement on behalf of Teresa Perry. Ms. Perry lives in the Pacifica condominium complex on Nickel Street, directly across from the Nandu operation. Her west-facing windows and balcony is on an upper floor overlooking Nandu. Ms. Perry is currently undergoing treatment for cancer and has a heart condition. Ms. Perry wanted to be here in person today to make her statement on the public record herself. However, for health reasons, she is unable to do so. My understanding is that she is watching online as I speak. Ms. Perry has identified the unannounced arrival, establishment, and ongoing operation of the Nandu site on Nickel Street to be a source of substantial psychological stress, which has been detrimental to her chronic health conditions. The witnessing of near constant dangerous activities, incidents, and near misses combined with excessive noise after Nandu operating hours have caused sleep dysregulation and strain on her health. The hazardous events Ms. Perry has witnessed involving users of the Nandu site are countless. If we were to try to summarize them all here, we would quickly run out of time. Ms. Perry may be outspoken, but she does not lack compassion for people struggling with addiction. She lived and worked for the Janitorial Services Union for many years on the downtown east side, including at the Insight Safe Injection site. She talks to people around the neighborhood on her daily activities and has been told by users that what is on offer from Nandu only helps keep them from feeling sick, but they keep using the street supply because the fentanyl is what gets them high. On November 23rd at about 9 p.m., Ms. Perry observed an ambulance parked at the gate to Nandu, attempting to gain entry to the site to provide life-saving care to a user who had overdosed. The attendant at Nandu refused to permit the paramedic to enter the compound for a full 25 minutes. She was timing. Instead, they tried to instruct the attendant on how to perform life-saving care until finally they were allowed in. The paramedic retrieved a lifeless body, put them in the back of the ambulance, and sped, lights and sirens blaring, in the direction of the hospital. On November 27th, there was a disturbance at the Nandu compound gate around 3 a.m. whereby a user was seeking to enter the compound after hours. A witness told Ms. Perry that they saw the attendant take a chair and hit the user over the head, quote, over and over and over again. She ran outside and yelled at them to stop, and the attendant went back into the compound and locked the gate, and the hurt user stumbled away up the alley. It has become apparent that the compound is being used as an overnight hostel after its regular operating hours, and there are up to 4 people now living there. On November 29th, there was a large fight inside the compound at around 8:30 p.m., and there was a lot of yelling and noise coming from the compound that sounded like a brawl. She has indicated to me that she has witnessed on 2 occasions semi-trucks having to swerve abruptly to avoid hitting a Nandu user jaywalking Nickel, and just last Thursday evening on December 1st, a user leaving the Nandu site was struck by an oncoming vehicle on Nickel Street less than a block away. After reaching out to Ms. Livingston directly when she saw her in the MGM parking lot next door one day last week, They arranged a meeting where Ms. Livingston revealed that there is someone living under a tarp in the truck parked on the property who is on probation and has nowhere else to go. She admitted that the man is violent and is unable to get him to leave. Needless to say, Ms. Perry and her neighbors residing at the Pacifica condo complex do not support the current location of the Nandu site and have serious concerns about the management, oversight, and safety of both people using the site and the safety of the surrounding community. In more recent weeks, Teresa feels she is a target of intimidation by users and operators of Nandu for voicing her concerns to the organizers of the site, which has escalated the stress she feels, simply for seeking accountability for the impacts of the site on the surrounding neighborhood, which she should be able to do without retribution. At this time, she also doesn't feel that the city bylaw is taking her calls seriously anymore because of how frequently she calls. She can confirm that many other tenants in her building share her concerns but are more fearful of reprisal than her for speaking out. It is her request that Nandu be shut down immediately given the extremely dangerous operating conditions and the unsafe, unsuitable location for these activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if council has any questions. I'm not seeing any. Appreciate your time tonight on behalf of Ms. Perry. Councillor Eastmere.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask again, what was the date of that incident when the ambulance was not permitted into, it was November 23rd, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. November 23rd at about 9 p.m. I can get you the video recording that she took of the site if you're interested.
That'd be appreciated, thank you. If you could send it to all of Mayor and Council.
Thanks very much. I can tell everyone tonight who's paying attention that I'm authorized to make several statements with respect to the operation of the Nandu site at 264 Nicholl Street. Firstly, that Council fully supports and recognizes the 2016 ministerial order and the mandate of the Health Board to provide as many overdose prevention services as required in locations they deem necessary to respond to the health emergency. As Nandu is funded by the province and is supported by Island Health, the city calls upon the Health Authority and the province to take necessary steps to support the site and to mitigate the impact on the community. And Council has also directed staff to pursue compliance with municipal bylaws and to bring forward a report for the consideration of designating the property a nuisance under the Nuisance Abatement and Cost Recovery Bylaw 2019, number 7250. And I am authorized, I should also say that staff are directed to pursue compliance with these bylaws and to bring forward the report as I indicated, and also that I'm authorized to respond to a letter from the Island Health Board Chair confirming that as the Nandu operation is funded by Island Health, that Island Health and the province take immediate steps to mitigate the impacts on the community arising from the activities at 264 Nicholl Street. Thank you. We are on to reports now. The first is item A, Covenant Amendment Application number CA 18-514540 Halliburton Street, 120 Needham Street, and 575 Nicholl Street. And that is you, Mr. Lindsay.
Sorry, Your Worship, you threw me a curve. I thought maybe you'd be taking your break now, so
Yeah, I was going to suggest that as well, Your Worship, but possibly after this item we could do that.
I thought we'd get one in before now. We're not slackers here yet.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be quick. This item, 12A, is one that Council saw at your meeting of November the 21st, where we brought forward an information report. So since that time, public notice has now occurred. And as Council will recall, the covenants were put in place a number of years ago at the time to bind the titles of all these properties and to essentially secure parking for previous redevelopment schemes that did not occur. At this point, staff feel that these covenants are no longer required and are recommending they be discharged, but are looking for Council's support in taking that step. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is anyone here who wishes to speak with respect to CA 18-514540 Halliburton Street, 120 Needham Street, and 575 Nicholl Street? I'm not seeing anyone, and I'm not seeing any questions from Council. The recommended motion moved by Councillor Perino, seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Come on, let's squeeze one more in, Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship.
The young fathers here appreciate my determination.
Next item on your agenda is Development Variance Permit 441 at 133 Pirates Lane. Your Worship, this is specifically a request in order to vary a number of sections of the city zoning bylaw in order to allow for a detached dwelling, a detached unit, which will include a carriage home and a workshop. And there's a small variance also being requested for an associated heat pump. The site is shown on the overhead, but maybe I'll ask that if attachment C is brought up, or if council wanted to look at attachment C in your package. It itemizes the variances and demonstrates the location of the variances in more detail. I realize it's very hard to read here, but in your package, they should be available to council. The largest variance I would probably note is the front yard variance, which is 6 meters to 2.16 meters, so a variance of 3.84 meters. On Your Worship, on the surface, that sounds like a large variance, but if you look at the context here, that's the variance from the road right-of-way. The actual edge of the road, in this case, the gravel road, Pirates Lane, is considerably further away. So partly because of that, staff are supporting the variance applications.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here wishing to speak with respect to DVP 441-133 Pirates Lane? Not seeing any. Moved the recommended motion by Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
Your Worship, I think there's somebody interested in the liquor license application coming up, so maybe we could get those two done first. I think somebody's here in the audience interested in that item.
Reversing your suggestion about me getting to
Yeah, I'm reversing. I'm changing course. I'm changing my mind.
Thank you, Worship, and I think I could be
Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you. I can be quick on both of these because the next two items are both information reports. So first, item C, liquor license application for 940 Old Victoria Road. And this is specifically an application in order to allow the Wolf Brewery Company to retain what was a temporary extension during COVID for an outdoor patio. This would make it permanent. And again, we'd be returning to council after notification for council's final recommendation. So just for information this evening, happy to take any questions.
Not seeing any, Mr. Lindsay. Thank you very much. Might as well do the next one too.
Your Worship, the next item is also liquor license application. This one is for 1630 East Wellington Road, and this is for the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 256. I would describe this one, Your Worship, as correcting an error that occurred back in 2018, and we've made many attempts to try to convince the Liquor Control Board to change the hours, but they've advised us the best way to proceed is to actually do an application amendment. So that's what the Legion has now done. This will, if approved, change the hours from noon to 1 a.m. back to 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 a.m., which they were for a number of years. So again, information report. Once the notice has been done, we'll return to council for final recommendation.
Not seeing any questions, I couldn't help resist offering the comment that I don't think the world will be shattered by this change, Mr. Lindsay. Thank you very much. Ms. Gurry, should we take the break? Let's take the break. No.
Our emergency routes, they are priority routes. They consist of roads that go to and from the hospitals, from the fire department stations, and from the BC ambulance stations. They're also their main commerce routes through the city of Nanaimo. So this allows commerce to happen during a snow event. So we hit those roads first. Once those are clear and open, then we move into the secondary roads, and then we move into the residential areas, which are dead-end roads and cul-de-sacs. And it can take up to 96 hours before we get into the residential areas. One of the side effects of plowing snow is it does end up on the sidewalk, and this can be very frustrating for homeowners and business owners that have just cleaned the sidewalk. It also pulls into their driveways. The crews try to keep it as close to the curb as they can, but we need to open the road right up to the curb to allow the drains to be exposed for when the snow starts to melt.
So this is one of our larger winter maintenance vehicles. They're very versatile in that they can be equipped with a lot of our different pieces of equipment. Right now this one has a front plow, a belly plow, as well as a salter or spreader box. We also have a brine unit that fits into this vehicle. This is the belly plow, and it's really good at removing hard-packed snow and ice. And then back up here to the front, we have what everyone is more familiar with. This front plow can push a lot of snow, so make sure that you slow down and keep your distance from the vehicles to ensure safety.
We have 17 vehicles that we use within the snow and ice operations for the city of Nanaimo. We also have an early shift that starts at 5 in the morning, and we have a night patrol, an afternoon shift, and an evening shift. They are eyes on the road, keeping us appraised of the conditions so that when the snow starts falling or ice starts forming on the roads, they can start salting and also call for other resources and mobilize the crews out.
This is one of the City of Nanaimo Public Works snow and ice control vehicles. And this is actually set up for a brining unit right now, or anti-icing. And what brine is a 23.3% sodium chloride solution. And it comes out of the spray bars down here at the bottom, and it's made here at the Public Works yard. It's a proactive method of snow and ice control, as when we know that there's a winter storm coming, we can actually lay this down on the road prior to the event.
By putting the brine down before the snow comes, it buys time. It lets us get on the roads, and then when we hit it with the plows, it doesn't stick. The snow doesn't stick, it comes off much easier. Whereas if we didn't brine, the snow has an opportunity to freeze to the road.
So another benefit of the brining or anti-icing unit is that during the frosty mornings, we can have it drive down the road, and then immediately the frost disappears as they're applying the brine.
Brine's a great tool for us. It's very cost effective. We can stretch our hard-pressed tax dollars to the maximum. We can make brine for cents on the dollar.
So the other thing that we ask is that everyone stays back from these anti-icing or any winter maintenance vehicles, as they have limited visibility and it's poor conditions out there, and they're trying to maneuver around everything. So just stay back and give them a little bit of room to operate and clear the roads.
So here we are in the Public Works yard, City of Nanaimo, and what you look around, you can see our various tools that we use for snow and ice fighting. We have tandem trucks, 4x4 trucks. We have backhoes. All our trucks are capable of having front plows on them. And the larger trucks, we have belly plows on them as well. And they all have a salter sander that can be mounted on the back.
This is another tool in our winter maintenance fleet. It's a salting machine. And what happens is that the salt gets loaded into this hopper, and on this conveyor where it gets hit with these two saddle tanks, which are full of brine. Then it comes out here on the spreader. And why we add the brine is that it reduces the amount of spray from the salt, so it doesn't bounce nearly as far, saving about 20 to 30% of our salt. As well, by using the anti-icing liquid on the salt, the activation starts right as it hits the road.
The purpose of the salt is to keep the roads bare, keep ice from forming on the road. Again, safety for everyone, including ourselves and the public. That's why we put the salt down.
Today we're talking about clearing catch basins or road drains on residential roads. The first thing to understand is where the catch basin is in proximity to your residence. When clearing a catch basin or road drain, we want to make sure that you make yourself visible and aware of oncoming traffic. When clearing snow or debris from a catch basin, we ask that you put it in an area where it will not plug the catch basin again, not placing it on an already shoveled driveway or sidewalk. Sandbags are available at 2020 Labio Road 24/7. Just remember to make sure you bring a shovel. The City of Nanaimo and Public Works appreciate your help in keeping your catch basins clear. Thank you.
On snow days like this, the city of Nanaimo sends out a fleet of plows. How well equipped are these trucks?
They're really well equipped. We all have plows and sanders on them. We come with a belly plow too, so we're well prepared once we get a big snow like this. A lot of waves, a lot of friendly faces. People are pretty happy when you come and rescue them and clear off their road. So on our maps to determine where we go, we follow our red routes, which are our bus routes and our major routes, and they're first. Then our secondary routes are in purple, followed lastly by our side streets, which are in yellow. We try not to cover a nicely shoveled driveway, but sometimes we don't really have an option, and it's unfortunate. We're not trying to do it on purpose.
In some cases, the plows can't scrape heavily packed or iced snow right down to the surface of the pavement. So how does it clear away?
We're taking off as much as we can, and then we're putting lots of salt down to melt the rest. So sometimes it just takes a little bit longer, but it's usually pretty effective. Salting is really important because if we get it down like this, then roads won't freeze, and way safer for the drivers out there.
And in terms of safety and getting the job done, are there some challenges to plowing in Nanaimo?
Yeah, Nanaimo's got a lot of hills, a lot of narrow streets, cars parked on it. It can be pretty tough sometimes.
How can drivers parking on the side of the road in Nanaimo help?
Just make sure they're parked legally and as close to the curb as possible so we can widen the streets as much as we can. We don't always move very fast, but that's important to push the snow, so we really appreciate if people can give us a little bit of space. These are big trucks. We have salters going, spinning, and we're still on a lot of ice and snow, so when we try to go up a hill, if people are right behind us, it can be dangerous for everybody. So we appreciate if everybody can give us some space behind us, and we'll give lots of space in front.
Down here, okay? There we go.
Oh, hey, Tiana.
Hey.
It sure is the coldest rink in town.
Thank you.
Whoa! Yeah, buddy!
Nice save, James!
Wow, your goalie is keeping you guys in the game. Cheers.
Oh, man, that's hot.
Sorry, that's the way I like it. Oh. Go, 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 go! Penalty shot!
Scalds from hot drinks are a leading cause of hospitalization for children under 5.
2 minutes, down in the front, unsportsmanlike conduct.
Hot tea and coffee will cause serious burns to a child in less than a second.
Got it, kid? Use the lid.
Mr. Sims, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. As noted in the council report and on the screen, the intent of the report for you is to introduce a modernized stormwater fee bylaw. And we recommend approval in the first 3 readings of that bylaw. So we took the opportunity at the same time as the water and sewer user rate bylaws were coming forward to harmonize that. The real driver for the stormwater bylaw was around consistency in the fees that we charged connections for developers. So for many, many years, we had a set connection fee in which we were losing. It was not cost neutral, let's put it that way. So I think it was something in the order of about $1,800 per connection when it cost significantly more than that. At the same time, we took the opportunity to modernize the bylaw, update it, make sure that it was still valid in all its respects, and it was subjected to not only legal review, but the severe scrutiny of Mrs. Robertson. And so the main focus of the bylaw really threefold. One, to regulate discharge to water courses, so to keep pollutants out and what can go in. Number 2 is to control any connections to the storm sewer system, which could include ditches or water courses. And also, as I mentioned, to impose fees and collect fines on its behalf. That's the recommendation. Be happy to answer any questions, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sims. I think Council went through this fairly extensively the other day. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that Storm Sewer Regulation and Fee Bylaw 2022, number 7351, to regulate and collect fees and fines for the storm sewer system service pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I would move that Storm Sewer Regulation and Fee Bylaw 2022, number 7351, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Storm Sewer Regulation and Fee Bylaw 2022, number 7351, pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next one is amendment to bulk water rates for Southwest Extension. Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you, Worship. So in 2004, the water supply service established under the Greater Nanaimo Water District Act was transferred to the City of Nanaimo, making the city responsible for the provision of water to the Southwest Extension Waterworks District. So under the legislation, the city's fees for this cannot exceed the cost of providing services. So based on the 5-year average annual water consumption volume, a rate of $4.17 per 1,000 gallons is proposed in this bylaw.
Very good. Again, extensive discussion about this the other day. I'm not seeing anyone. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7099.11, a bylaw to set the 2023 bulk water rate for Southwest Extension, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Manley. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I would move that Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7099.11, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Brown. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you.
I would move that Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7099.11, pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. On to G, amendment to rates and charges for municipal solid waste collection. Ms. Mercer again, please.
Thank you. So solid waste, municipal solid waste collection fees are proposed to increase by 2.3% in 2023, and this will bring the annual cost to $221, up from $216 in 2022, marking a $5 increase. So the $5 increase is mainly due to the increased debt costs associated with 3 new refuse vehicles that will be arriving in the spring. And this increase also does reflect the increased funding the city has received from Recycle BC.
Very good. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Municipal Solid Waste Collection Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7128.14, a bylaw to set the solid waste collection rates for 2023, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Municipal Solid Waste Collection Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7128.14, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Manley. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I would move that Municipal Solid Waste Collection Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7128.14, pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We're on to amendment to user fee subsidies for 2023. Again, Ms. Mercer.
So thank
your
you.
night's your night.
Yeah, it is. Under the Municipalities Enabling and Validating Act, the city has the ability to waive a part of water and sewer rates to properties owned and occupied by any class of citizen 65 years of age and older. So historically, the income qualification levels were set at 10% above the senior's maximum available income from old age security and guaranteed income supplement. However, this year staff are suggesting a better benchmark to use would be the Statistics Canada low income cutoff limits, as it is more widely used to establish low income cutoffs in Canada. So this results in slightly a higher amount of threshold levels than the historical calculation. So based on the updated information, the new cutoffs for low income are recommended to be $27,649 in annual income for a single owner, and $34,419 for a couple. So that's what's being recommended to be set in this bylaw.
Thank you very much. And having received a few letters over the last few years from folks, I compliment staff for including this and moving forward. Councillor Hemmons. Councillor Manley, you wanted to say something?
I'm curious about whether the Municipalities Enabling and Validating Act does this for low-income people, or is it just based on seniors alone?
Through your worship to Councillor Manley, we did look at it for people under the age of 65, but the information we received back is it has to be 65 and older.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I move that User Fee Subsidies Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7095.04, a bylaw to set the 2023 thresholds for user fee subsidies, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that User Fee Subsidies Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7095.04, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that User Fee Subsidies Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7095.04, pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Eastmere. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Item I, amendment to rates and charges for water. Ms. Mercer again.
So as per our budget discussions, effective January 1st, 2023, water fees are proposed to increase by 5% or $30 for the annual or the single family home based on seasonal usage. And this will bring the annual cost for a single family home to $487 based on seasonal average use. So 2% of this increase is required to fund the long-term asset management plans for the city's water system, and the remaining 3% will fund the annual operating increase. So the amended bylaw reflects all of the recommendations for the water utility outlined in the utility rate review that was presented to Council.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7004.18, to set the 2022 water rates, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7004.18, pass second reading.
Seconded Councillor Manley. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7004.18, pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Item J, amendment to rates and charges for sanitary sewer.
Again.
From the beginning to the end, so to speak, from water to sewer.
So again, as per our budget discussions, effective January 1st, 2023, sewer fees are proposed to increase by 4% or $6 per single-family home. And this will bring the annual cost for a single-family home to $158. So 2% of this increase is to fund long-term asset management for the city's sanitary sewer systems, and the remaining 2% will fund the annual operating increase. So again, this amended bylaw reflects all of the recommendations for the sanitary sewer utility outlined in the utility rate review that was presented to council.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Sewer Regulation and Charge Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 2496.35, to set the 2022 rates for sanitary sewer pass first reading.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Sewer Regulation and Charge Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 2496.35, pass second reading.
Seconded Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I move that Sewer Regulation and Charge Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 2496.35, pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is the 2023 Acting Mayor Calendar. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Section 130 of the Community Charter requires that Council, in accordance with its applicable procedure bylaw, provide for the designation of a councillor as the member responsible for acting in the place of the mayor when the mayor is absent or otherwise unable to act, or when the office of the mayor is vacant. So Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272, requires that the corporate officer annually prepare a schedule to designate council members to serve as acting mayor on a rotating basis. So before you, and the purpose of this report is to present Council's consideration of the draft 2023 acting mayor schedule. There is a recommendation here, however, and this is just an example of what could come forward after you potentially adopt this acting mayor schedule this evening. Before you move the recommended motion, if that is your plan, Councillor Eastmere and Perino have agreed to switch their time slots in the recommended schedule to accommodate their schedule. So if throughout the year you need to accommodate or have someone else act for you as acting mayor, that is absolutely possible. The Community Charter and Procedure Bylaw require that we set this schedule before the year end annually.
And if we may, I gather Councillors Gesselbrock and Brown wish to switch, because Councillor Gesselbrock will have a holiday in January, so Councillor Brown would then act in January to February 12th, and Councillor Gesselbrock will act from May 8th to June 25th.
Okay, Your Worship. So we can switch that.
No one will notice the difference.
Yes, exactly. So we'll switch that, and we'll switch Eastmere and Perino, and then that would be the motion that you would put on the floor, someone of council.
So moved by Councillor Armstrong, so we're clear. It'll be just in order. Councillors Brown, Armstrong, Thorpe, Gesselbrock, Hemmons, Perino, Eastmere, Manley. Pardon me, Perino, Manley, and Eastmere. Yes? Good. Councillor, sorry? Councillor Perino.
So let me just ask again, just so I understand this, because I realize I have no problem with the dates. However, I have a very, very big anniversary. So I just, if I'm, it's okay to change like a couple of days That's all right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Perino. And there's also the break in accordance with our procedure bylaw through August. So I'm not sure when your special date is, but there is a lot of time off during these dates, as well as you can perfectly reasonably switch. And normally in the absence of the acting mayor, if the mayor's away, the acting mayor's away, it goes to the next person in line as acting mayor.
Perfect, thank you. And can I ask, does it just rotate again? Do the dates change? What I'm wondering is, I'm hoping it will change for the following year to a different time.
It can.
Your worship, it can. We have done this a number of different ways as outlined in the report. Last year, we kept it the same as the previous year, as that was the desire of council of that day. So eventually, maybe after next year's, we can get it right and you'll want to continue on that one. But it is at the pleasure of council.
Okay, good, thank you.
I don't think we've had a mover yet.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, it's on the floor, your worship.
Oh, thank you. I'm getting tired. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is the 2023 Council and Committee key date calendar. Ms. Curry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So another requirement of the Community Charter and the Procedure Bylaw, prior to December 31st each year, a key date calendar for council meetings, public hearing meetings. We also have included the Governance and Priorities Committee meetings and Finance and Audit Committee meetings for your approval this evening. These dates are set in accordance with the procedure bylaw, and adjustments have been made for statutory holidays and conventions such as FCM, UBCM, and AVICC. So doing our best, working within those parameters, we have established a key date calendar. Again, not unlike the acting mayor schedule, meetings can be canceled, meetings can be added in accordance with the community charter and procedure bylaw. So this is the calendars for your approval this evening.
Moved by Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have no bylaws. We have no notice of motion. Question period sheet. Not seeing any questioners. We have no other business. Motion for adjournment. Moved Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Manley. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. A longer day than usual, but lots accomplished. Much appreciated.